Have you ever looked at your life and thought, why does it feel like everything is so hard for me? Or maybe you've asked yourself, why do I keep going through storms others seem to avoid? If that's you, pause. Breathe. This video is for you. Because what if I told you that the pain, the isolation, the rejection, and the deep, unshakable yearning you've carried in your heart, they are not curses. They are clues. Clues that you've been marked by heaven for something bigger than yourself. In this video, we are going to uncover 7 spiritual signs that someone is destined for great success, not just fame or fortune, but divine, God-backed impact. And we are not just going to list them. We are going to explore the deep meaning behind each one, the Bible stories that prove them, and how they might already be unfolding in your own life. So if you've ever felt like life has been unusually hard, or like you carry a fire in your soul that won't die, stay with me. Let's begin. Point 1. They experience unusual trials and attacks early in life. Let's be honest, some people seem to coast through life like it's a Sunday picnic, while others, it's like the minute they were born, all hell broke loose. If you are one of those people who's faced rejection, betrayal, abuse, poverty, or failure from a young age, don't be too quick to assume you're cursed. Because greatness attracts warfare. Before the crown comes the cross. In Jeremiah 1 verse 5, God says, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart." That means your life had purpose before your problems ever showed up. Let me take you to the story of Joseph in Genesis. Joseph was just a teenager when his own brothers turned on him. They stripped him of his colorful robe, the symbol of his favor, and threw him into a pit. Why? Because of his dreams. Because of the favor on his life. Because of the future they couldn't understand, but the enemy could smell. From the pit, he was sold into slavery. From slavery, he ended up in prison, falsely accused. All this before he was even 30. Now let me ask you, what kind of attacks have come into your life early? What pits have you found yourself in? What lies have been spoken about you? You see, Joseph's suffering wasn't a detour, it was the road. The road to the palace, to being second only to Pharaoh, to saving a whole nation. Had he not been betrayed, he would never have been positioned. And the same may be true for you. Sometimes God allows deep pain early in life, not to break you, but to shape you. To soften your heart. To build your endurance. To teach you what no classroom ever could. Think of Nelson Mandela. Before he became a global icon of peace and justice, he spent 27 years in prison. It looked like failure. It looked like silence. But it was preparation. If your childhood was messy, if your early years were full of chaos, don't let shame write your story. You might just be Joseph in your generation, or David in the cave before the crown. Instead of asking, why me? Start asking, what is God preparing me for? Because hear this. The size of your battle may be the size of your calling in disguise. Point 2. They have a deep inner drive or calling that can't be shaken. There's a kind of restlessness that doesn't come from caffeine or stress, it comes from destiny. It's that feeling in your gut that won't let you settle. You try to do what everyone else is doing, but something inside you whispers, this isn't it. There's more. Have you ever felt that? That's not ambition. That's not ego. That's a spiritual fire. Jeremiah 20 verse 9 says, "His word was in my heart like a burning fire shut up in my bones. I was weary of holding it back, but I could not." Jeremiah was tired of preaching. He was ridiculed, rejected, mocked. He wanted to quit. He literally said, "I will not mention his word anymore." But he couldn't. Why? Because he wasn't operating out of desire, he was driven by divine assignment. Let's talk about Moses. He grew up in a palace with every luxury Pharaoh's grandson could ask for. But he couldn't enjoy it. Why? Because every time he saw his Hebrew brothers being beaten and enslaved, something burned inside him. He tried to ignore it. He even ran away after killing an Egyptian. But decades later, the burning bush found him in the wilderness. Moses had tried to bury the call. But the call came back to bury his excuses. He said, "I can't speak." God said, "I'll send Aaron." He said, "What if they don't believe me?" God gave him signs. He said, "Who am I?" God said, "I am who I am." You see, when God calls you, no excuse is good enough. Because he already factored your flaws into his plan. Martin Luther King Jr. could have chosen a quiet life as a pastor, but his spirit couldn't sit still in the face of injustice. The marches, the speeches, the threats, he didn't choose them to be popular. He was simply responding to the fire inside. Maybe you've tried other jobs, other relationships, other lifestyles, but there's always this pull, this nudge, this thing you can't shake. You see people doing what you know you're meant to do, and something inside screams, "That should be me." Friend, that's not fantasy. That's calling. And here's the bittersweet truth. When God has marked you, comfort will never satisfy you. So don't be discouraged if you feel out of place in average spaces. It might be because you were never created to live an average life. Instead of trying to blend in, maybe it's time to lean in to your gift, your fire, your divine pull. Because if you don't answer the call, life will always feel a little off. Like you are breathing, but not truly alive. Point 3. They are unusually humble or teachable. Let's talk about something that rarely trends on social media: humility. Not the fake kind that posts, "Blessed and highly favored," while secretly dripping in pride. I'm talking about the kind of humility that says, "I don't know everything. I need help. I can be wrong. Teach me." Because hear this. Before God lifts a person high, he first brings them low enough to listen. Proverbs 11 verse 2 says, "When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom." And in James 4 verse 6, God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Success, real, God-ordained. Lasting success is built on the soil of a teachable spirit. Let's look at David, not the giant-slaying king, but the shepherd boy. When the prophet Samuel came to anoint the next king of Israel, David wasn't even invited to the ceremony. His own father left him out. Everyone saw a boy. God saw a king. Now here's the kicker: David didn't fight to be seen. He stayed with the sheep. He didn't force the throne. He played the harp. He wrote psalms. He submitted to Saul, even when Saul was trying to kill him. What kind of man refuses to kill his enemy when he has the chance? A man who fears God more than he fears delay. David was teachable. He listened to God, to prophets, to correction. And that's why God called him a man after my own heart. Acts 13 verse 22. That kind of heart doesn't just happen, it's trained in secret. Abraham Lincoln, before becoming the US president, failed in business. Lost elections, suffered deep depression. But he read voraciously, learned constantly, listened quietly. It wasn't charisma that made him great, it was his humility and wisdom in suffering. Now let's turn the mirror on ourselves. Can you handle correction without getting offended? Can God tell you no and you still trust him? Can someone younger, poorer, or less educated teach you something and you not roll your eyes? Because here's a brutal truth. God doesn't elevate people who always think they are already there. no matter how gifted you are. If you lack a teachable spirit, your gift will collapse under the weight of your pride. But if you stay humble, if you're willing to learn from pain, from people, from scripture, from failure, God will entrust you with levels others only dream of. Humility isn't weakness. It's a spiritual passport to greatness. Point 4. They often feel alone or misunderstood. Let me ask you a hard question. Have you ever walked into a room full of people and still felt completely invisible? Ever tried to explain your dreams, your fire, your hunger for purpose, and people looked at you like you were speaking Swahili in a sushi bar? If you've ever felt chronically misunderstood, constantly out of place, like a round peg in a square hole, that's not random. It could be a spiritual sign that God has set you apart for something uncommon. In John 15 verse 19, Jesus said, "If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. But as it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you." Now, I'm not saying you're hated, I'm saying that sometimes divine calling disconnects you from common circles. Let's rewind to the days of Noah. God gave Noah a bizarre assignment: build a boat in the middle of dry land. Because rain is coming. Rain. What rain? The people had never even seen rain before. Imagine the mockery. Imagine how lonely he felt, hammering away at that ark while neighbors laughed over barbecue and wine. He probably thought, "God, why me? Why now? Why this?" But Noah wasn't crazy, he was called. And when the rain finally came, the very thing that made him look foolish became the reason his family was saved. Let that sink in. Sometimes your isolation is divine insulation. Mother Teresa spent most of her life in Calcutta, loving the unlovable, touching the untouchable. Even though she had millions of supporters later, she once confessed that she had long seasons of spiritual darkness and loneliness, feeling as if God was silent. And yet, she kept going. Because calling isn't based on how you feel, it's based on who sent you. Maybe you've lost friends because you won't conform. Maybe your family doesn't understand why you are so deep or too serious about God. Maybe people mock your vision, your boundaries, your purity, your silence. But let me remind you, you're not weird, you're wired differently. God doesn't make influences by crowd approval. He makes them in caves, in silence, in deserts. Just ask Elijah. Ask David. Ask Jesus, who even had to retreat from his disciples to go and pray alone. Sometimes, being alone is not punishment. It's preparation. So if you feel lonely or misunderstood right now, don't rush to fix it with noise or company. God may be separating you so He can speak to you. He may be silencing every other voice so you can learn to recognize His. Because some journeys are so sacred, they have to be taken alone. Point 5. They are drawn to help others, even when it hurts. Let me paint the picture. You're exhausted. You've got your own bills to pay. Your phone is filled with unread messages. And just when you finally get a moment to breathe, someone needs you. Again. And somehow, despite the burnout, despite the inconvenience, despite the heartbreak in your own chest, you still show up. You listen. You comfort. You give. And sometimes, they don't even say thank you. Sound familiar? That's not just kindness. That's not just being a nice person. That's purpose trying to break through your pain. In Isaiah 58 verse 10, God says, "If you pour yourself out for the hungry and satisfy the desire of the afflicted, then shall your light rise in the darkness." Catch that. The more you pour, the more you shine. People who are marked for greatness often carry a burden for others. Even when no one notices. Even when it hurts. Even when there's nothing in it for them. Let's look at Joseph. Betrayed by his own brothers. Thrown in a pit. Sold as a slave. Falsely accused. Thrown into prison for doing the right thing. And what did he do in that prison? Sulk? Plot revenge? No. He interpreted dreams for others. He ministered while broken. And years later, when famine hit and his betrayers came crawling back, Joseph didn't gloat. He fed them. Why? Because even when Joseph had every reason to turn inward, he still turned outward. That's how you know someone's truly great. When their pain doesn't kill their compassion. If your first instinct, even in struggle, is to help, to give, to protect others from the pain you understand so well, then you're not weak. You are walking in God's heart. Harriet Tubman escaped slavery. That alone is worth celebrating. But she didn't stop there. She went back again and again, risking death to lead others to freedom. Why? Because when God marks someone for greatness, their wounds become weapons for others' freedom. She once said, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." Now that is purpose. That is legacy. Do people seem to lean on you even when you feel broken? Do you feel a strange calling to encourage others through the very thing that almost destroyed you? Have you ever cried alone one night and comforted someone else the next day like you had no pain at all? Friend, that's not hypocrisy. That's divine strength in disguise. Because sometimes God allows you to feel deeply, so you can heal others richly. So the next time your heart bleeds while your hands serve, don't curse the pain. It's proof of your purpose. You are not just helping people. You are becoming the kind of person God can trust with nations. Point 6. They are often attacked early in life or called names. Let's tell the truth that no one wants to say out loud. Some people go through hell too early. As a child, you were rejected, lied on, touched wrongly, bullied, laughed at. You were told, "You're too much," or "You'll never be anything." You were labeled lazy, ugly, stubborn, stupid by people who should have protected you. And you ask yourself, why did all this happen to me so young? Here's a kingdom secret. The devil often attacks early what God intends to elevate greatly. In Jeremiah 1 verse 5, God told the prophet, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." But what happens when someone is set apart? The enemy takes notice. So he plants rejection, trauma, identity confusion. He hopes to break the tree before the roots grow deep. Think of Moses. Before Moses could even say Mama, Pharaoh had ordered all Hebrew baby boys to be killed. Why? Because a deliverer was born and the devil panicked. Moses was targeted before he ever did anything. He grew up with an identity crisis, Hebrew by blood, Egyptian by culture. He murdered a man, ran to the wilderness, and stuttered when God called him. But guess what? The same baby the enemy tried to drown became the man who drowned Pharaoh's entire army in the Red Sea. Let that sink in. Sometimes the attack is not about your past, it's a prophecy about your future. Oprah Winfrey was born into poverty, abused as a child, lost a child in her teens, fired from one of her first TV jobs because she was unfit for television. Now, she's one of the most influential women in media history. What if she had believed those early voices? What if she let those childhood labels define her? Don't you see? The enemy attacks your beginning, To scare you away from your becoming? Were you targeted early? Did you go through things as a child that you couldn't even process until your 30s or 40s? Did people try to name you things that still haunt you? If yes, please hear me. You are not cursed. You are called. You weren't rejected because you're worthless. You were rejected because the room wasn't big enough for your anointing. Every insult, every abandonment, every dark memory was hell trying to abort heaven's assignment in you. But guess what? You're still here. And if you're still breathing, you're still dangerous. So don't waste your pain. Don't wear your labels. And don't bow to a past that's trying to distract you from your crown. Because those childhood scars, they are not signs of weakness. They are birthmarks of destiny. Point 7. They often experience delays, detours, or repeated setbacks. Let me ask you a hard question. Have you ever felt like your life is on pause while everyone else is on play? You pray. You fast. You obey God. But the job doesn't come. The spouse doesn't appear. The breakthrough is still pending. The callings in your heart don't match the calendar of your life. Friend, you are not cursed. You might just be in training for greatness. Because when God is doing something big in you, it often looks like nothing is happening around you. Habakkuk 2 verse 3 says, "Though the vision tarries, wait for it. It will surely come, it will not delay." But notice, it says wait for it. Because the bigger the calling, the longer the crafting. God anointed David as king when he was just a shepherd boy. But did he become king the next day? Nope. He went back to the sheep. Then to the battlefield. Then into hiding, running from Saul. Sleeping in caves. Playing mad in foreign lands. Years passed. But guess what? In those silent years, God was sculpting a king out of a kid. While others saw delays, God saw development. So by the time David finally sat on the throne, he didn't just have the crown. He had the character to carry it. Because elevation without preparation is a setup for destruction. Mandela spent 27 years in prison. Most people would lose their minds. Give up. Grow bitter. But he came out wiser, calmer, stronger, and led a nation to freedom with grace and dignity. Why? Because the prison wasn't the end. It was the preparation room for the palace. God often uses the detour to build the version of you that can handle the destination. Have you been experiencing delay after delay? Doors shut in your face. Opportunities that looked promising suddenly gone. Maybe, just maybe, you're not being denied. You're being deliberately developed. Some roads take longer not because they are broken, but because they are leading to a higher altitude. And higher altitudes need stronger wings. So don't curse the delay. Don't despise the detour. Don't let the enemy whisper that you are behind. Because in God's kingdom, the last often becomes the first. And the ones who waited long often rule strong. Let's bring it home. If these 7 signs sound like your life, if you've wrestled with pain, felt misunderstood, given when you had nothing, cried alone, been delayed, or attacked early, you are not weak. You are not forgotten. You are not average. You are marked, chosen, destined, dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. You carry the DNA of destiny. You are walking through fire because you were made to carry glory. Every scar has a story. Every story has a purpose. And every purpose has a reward. So don't stop. Don't shrink. Don't silence your roar to make others comfortable. Because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more voices like yours, healed, whole, wise, and unafraid. You are not behind. You are being built. And when the moment comes, when God says now, no demon in hell, no delay on earth, and no opinion from your past will stop what He has already set in motion. If this video spoke to your spirit, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Someone out there needs this exact message today. And drop a comment below. Which of these 7 signs hit you the hardest? Until next time, keep walking boldly. Because heaven is watching and your crown is closer than you think. See you at the top. Because that's where you belong.